My husband's face didn't even change expression as he leaned across our anniversary dinner and whispered, "I want a divorce." 15 years of marriage reduced to 5 cold words between the entree and dessert. I sat frozen, the $300 bottle of wine suddenly tasting like vinegar in my mouth. What he didn't know was that while he'd been planning his exit, I'd been quietly building my empire. And the $40 million fortune he thought he'd get his hands on, it was already disappearing into accounts he would never find. Have you ever had that moment when your entire world shifts in an instant? When someone you trusted completely betrays you in the most callous way? If you have, you might understand what I felt that night. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing to hear more stories of justice and vindication. Now, let me tell you what happened next. My name is Rebecca, and I'm 38 years old. 15 years ago, I married Marcus, believing we would grow old together. We built our bakery business from nothing, working side by side, day and night. At least, that's what I thought we were doing. Our 15th anniversary dinner at the Willow and Vine was supposed to be a celebration of our journey together. Instead, it marked the beginning of the end, and the start of my unexpected revenge. I still remember every detail of that night. The restaurant had given us the private alcove overlooking Elliott Bay, the same spot where Marcus had proposed. White roses, my favorite, adorned the table, their scent mixing with the aroma of truffle and aged wine. I'd spent hours getting ready, choosing a blue dress that matched the sapphire necklace Marcus had given me on our 10th anniversary. I wanted everything to be perfect, hoping to rekindle the connection that had been fading for months. Marcus was handsome as ever in his tailored suit, but something was off. He kept checking his phone, his attention elsewhere. I chalked it up to the stress of opening our newest bakery location. After all, expanding from a single small shop to a chain of 12 gourmet patisseries across Seattle had been demanding. To 15 years, I said, raising my glass. He clinked mine half-heartedly, barely meeting my eyes. When the waiter brought our chocolate soufflé with "Happy Anniversary" written in raspberry coulis, I reached for Marcus's hand across the table. That's when he leaned forward, his eyes cold and distant. "I want a divorce," he whispered, as if he were simply commenting on the dessert. The world around me blared. The clink of silverware, the murmur of nearby diners, the soft piano music, everything faded into white noise. "What?" I managed to say, my voice barely audible. "It's not working anymore, Rebecca. I think we both know that." His tone was rehearsed, emotionless. "After 15 years, this is how you tell me? On our anniversary?" I couldn't process what was happening. "What about Leela? What about the business?" He checked his watch. "We can discuss the details later. I've already spoken to a lawyer." Already spoken to a lawyer. The words echoed in my head. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was calculated, planned. "Is there someone else?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew the answer. His silence told me everything. The drive home was a blur. Marcus took a separate car. He had a meeting, he claimed. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles turned white, tears streaming down my face. 15 years of memories flashed through my mind. Our wedding day in the garden of my parents' home, the birth of our daughter, Leela, the grand opening of our first bakery, vacations in Maui and Paris, quiet Sunday mornings reading the newspaper together. Had it all been a lie? When had he stopped loving me? Why hadn't I seen this coming? I pulled into our driveway, our Georgian-style home looming before me. The home we bought 5 years ago when the business really took off. The home where we'd raised Leela, hosted dinner parties, celebrated holidays, and built what I thought was a solid foundation for our future. Inside, the house was silent. Leela was at a sleepover with her best friend, Emma. I was grateful she wasn't there to witness my breakdown as I collapsed onto our bed, the bed Marcus and I had shared for years, and sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. That night, I barely slept. By morning, shock had given way to a cold, clear anger. Marcus hadn't come home. His side of the closet was noticeably emptier. He must have been removing clothes gradually, preparing for this moment without my noticing. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen island, trying to gather my thoughts. That's when I saw the note propped against the fruit bowl. "We'll talk when you're ready. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Don't make this harder than it has to be." As if I were the unreasonable one for being upset about my marriage ending without warning. I crumpled the note and threw it across the room. Then I did what I always did in times of crisis. I made a list. I needed to understand exactly what was happening and what my options were. I needed to protect myself, my daughter, and everything I'd worked for. First things first. I called Lila's friend's mother and arranged for my daughter to stay an extra day. I couldn't face telling her about the divorce yet. Not when I was still reeling myself. Then I checked our accounts. That's when the second shock hit me. Our joint checking account, which should have contained over $200,000, had been drained to just $1,500, barely enough to cover the household bills for the month. Our joint savings account showed multiple large withdrawals over the past 3 months. I felt sick. This wasn't just a divorce. This was theft. With shaking hands, I called Mr. Patel, our accountant. There was a long pause after I explained the situation. "Mrs. Wilson?" He hesitated. "I assumed you knew. Mr. Wilson said you had authorized these transfers as part of a business restructuring." "What transfers exactly, Mr. Patel?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the rage building inside me. He detailed a series of movements that made my head spin. Marcus had been systematically moving assets for months, preparing for this moment with military precision. "And the business accounts?" I asked, dreading the answer. Another pause. "Most have been transferred to the new holding company. Again, I was told you had approved this." I thanked Mr. Patel and hung up, my mind racing. I needed legal help. And I needed it immediately. Before I could make another move, my phone rang. It was Priya, my childhood friend and financial advisor. We'd grown up together in the same Seattle neighborhood, lost touch during college, and reconnected when I was looking for investment advice 7 years ago. Unlike Marcus, who treated money as something to be spent and shown off, Priya had taught me the value of quiet wealth and strategic investment. "Rebecca, are you okay? I just got a call from Marcus asking about your private accounts," she said, concern evident in her voice. My heart skipped a beat. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing, of course. Those accounts are in your name only, and I would never disclose your financial information without your consent." She paused. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The anniversary dinner, the divorce announcement, the emptied accounts. "That son of a bitch," Priya muttered. "But listen to me, Rebecca. You're in a much better position than he thinks." She was referring to what Marcus didn't know. What almost no one knew. 7 years ago, following the advice of my Russian immigrant grandmother, Yelena, I had started setting aside a portion of my income from the bakeries. "Always have something of your own," Babushka had told me after witnessing a particularly heated argument between Marcus and me about money. "Men come and go, but security is forever." I remember that day so clearly. Marcus and I had been arguing about the expansion of our third bakery location. I wanted to reinvest more profits back into the business, while he wanted to use the money for a vacation home in Aspen. The argument had escalated, with Marcus dismissing my concerns and reminding me that he handled the financial side of things. "You stick to the baking, I'll handle the money," he'd said dismissively, as if my contribution to our business was merely decorative. Later that evening, my grandmother had found me crying in the garden. At 85, Yelena was still sharp as a tack, her accent thick, but her wisdom sharper. She'd escaped Soviet Russia in the 1960s with nothing but the clothes on her back and her precious recipe book. Through sheer determination, she'd built a new life in America, working as a housekeeper while saving every penny. "Vnuchka," she'd said, using the Russian word for granddaughter, "let me tell you something my mother told me. A woman must always have 3 things. A skill that can feed her family, a secret place to hide her valuables, and money that no one knows about." She'd pressed a small key into my palm. "This opens a safe deposit box at First Seattle Bank. Inside is $50,000, my life savings. It's yours now. Use it to start something for yourself, something he cannot touch." I'd protested at first, feeling disloyal, for even considering a separate financial life from my husband. But Yelena had been insistent. This is not about trust, Rebecca. This is about survival. My mother trusted my father completely. And when he gambled away everything they owned, she and her children nearly starved. Love with your heart, but protect yourself with your head. With Priya's guidance, I had invested in commercial real estate, tech startups, and a diversified stock portfolio. What had started as a modest safety net had grown into a substantial fortune, over $40 million, to be exact. All in my name, all legally separate from our marital assets, all unknown to Marcus. He can't touch those funds, Priya assured me, but given what he's already done, we need to take precautions. He's clearly planning to leave you with nothing. That night, after Leela had gone to bed, I sat in my home office, surrounded by financial statements and legal documents. The more I dug, the more horrified I became. Marcus hadn't just been siphoning money, he'd been systematically dismantling what we'd built together. He'd opened new LLCs in his name alone, transferred ownership of key properties, and even forged my signature on several documents. Our flagship bakery, the original location we'd opened together, where we'd worked 18-hour days for years, was now solely in his name. He'd even remortgaged our home without my knowledge, using a signature that was close to mine, but definitely not authentic. I remembered how we'd found that first bakery location. It was a tiny storefront in Pike Place Market, barely 600 square feet, with outdated equipment and peeling linoleum floors. But I'd fallen in love with the large windows that let in streams of morning light and the view of the water in the distance. This is it, I'd told Marcus, squeezing his hand. This is where Yelena's recipes will come to life. We'd scraped together every penny we had for the down payment, then worked around the clock to renovate the space ourselves. I'd painted the walls a warm butter yellow, while Marcus installed the display cases. We'd opened Sweet Memories Bakery on a rainy Tuesday in April, with just 6 varieties of pastries and my grandmother's special Russian tea cakes. By noon, we'd sold out completely. By the end of the week, there was a line out the door every morning. Within a year, we'd expanded to the vacant space next door. Within 5 years, we had 3 locations. And now, 15 years later, we had 12 thriving bakeries across Seattle, all built on my grandmother's recipes, my creative vision, and our shared hard work, or so I thought. I realized then that this wasn't just about a failing marriage or another woman. This was calculated financial abuse. He was trying to erase me from the business I had helped create, the business that bore my grandmother's recipes and my creative vision. The betrayal cut deeper than his infidelity ever could. If you're watching this and have ever felt the sting of betrayal from someone you trusted completely, hit the like button. And if you want to see how the story unfolds, how I fought back against a man who tried to steal everything from me, subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and vindication. The next morning, I called Harper Reynolds, a private investigator recommended by my college roommate, who had gone through a messy divorce years earlier. Harper was direct, efficient, and seemed to understand immediately what I was facing. "Men like your husband follow patterns," she said during our first meeting at a quiet coffee shop far from any of our bakeries. "They think they're clever, but they leave breadcrumbs. My job is to follow those breadcrumbs." Harper was unlike anyone I'd ever met, a former military intelligence officer with a no-nonsense attitude and a fierce commitment to helping women in situations like mine. She wore her gray hair in a practical bob, her keen eyes missing nothing as she reviewed the documents I'd brought. "This is textbook financial abuse," she said, tapping a manicured nail on the forged documents. "I see it all the time. Successful man decides he wants out, but doesn't want to split the assets fairly. So he creates a paper trail, hides money, and gaslights his wife into thinking she's getting a fair deal when she's actually being robbed blind." "I just can't believe I didn't see it coming," I admitted, the shame of my naivety washing over me. Harper's expression softened slightly. "Rebecca, these men are predators. They're charming, manipulative, and very good at what they do. The fact that you trusted your husband of 15 years doesn't make you naive, it makes you human." Within days, Harper had uncovered what I had suspected but couldn't prove. Marcus was having an affair with Bianca Torres, a 26-year-old manager we'd hired for our Capitol Hill location just over a year ago. Harper provided photographs of them entering a downtown condo together, receipts from romantic dinners, and even screenshots of text messages discussing their future together. A future that apparently included my business. Need to finalize everything before R knows what hit her. Marcus had texted Bianca 3 weeks before our anniversary. Once the divorce is filed, we'll have the whole chain. Talk to lawyer again. She'll get the house, but we'll have the real moneymaker. Reading those words made me physically ill. I had hired Bianca myself, mentored her, even invited her to our home for dinner, all while they were plotting behind my back. I remembered the day I'd interviewed Bianca. She'd been fresh out of business school, eager and full of ideas. I'd seen something of myself in her, the hunger to prove herself, the creative spark. I'd taken her under my wing, teaching her everything I knew about both baking and business management. You have a gift for this, I'd told her after she successfully launched a new line of gluten-free pastries that had boosted sales by 15%. You're going to go far in this industry. She'd beamed at the praise, thanking me profusely for the opportunity. Had she already been seeing Marcus then? Had they laughed about my mentorship behind my back? The thought made my stomach turn. But the worst was yet to come. Harper had also discovered that Marcus was planning to use the divorce to force a sale of the business, with him as the primary buyer through his new holding company. He'd been manipulating the books, making it appear as if several locations were underperforming, creating a paper trail to justify selling them at below market value, to himself, through shell companies. He's been thorough, Harper admitted, but not thorough enough. The forgeries alone are enough for criminal charges. And I found this. She slid a document across the table. It was an email from Marcus to his lawyer, dated 6 months prior. Need to move quickly on this. Rebecca has no idea about the Seattle Heights deal. If she finds out before everything is in place, she could cause problems. The property alone is worth millions, not to mention the development potential. Once the divorce is finalized, the LLC takes ownership. And she gets nothing. The Seattle Heights deal. I had no idea what that was, but clearly it was valuable enough for Marcus to hide it from me. Harper promised to dig deeper. Armed with this information, I met with Diana Chen, one of Seattle's top divorce attorneys. Her office and a downtown high-rise spoke of success and power, exactly what I needed on my side. Diana was a legend in Seattle legal circles, a Harvard-educated lawyer, known for her razor-sharp mind and take-no-prisoners approach to divorce cases. She'd represented tech executives, professional athletes, and business moguls, earning a reputation for securing favorable settlements even in the most contentious situations. Her corner office offered a panoramic view of Puget Sound, the sleek furnishings and modern art pieces reflecting her impeccable taste. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her silk blouse and tailored suit exuding confidence and authority. "Rebecca Wilson," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "I've heard about your bakeries. The chocolate almond croissants at your Queen Anne location got me through my last big case." The small personal touch put me at ease immediately. I laid out my situation, showing her the evidence Harper had gathered, and explaining my separate financial holdings. "You're actually in a better position than most of my clients," Diana said after reviewing everything I'd brought her. "The separate fortune you've built gives you options, and his actions, the forgeries, the hidden assets, the financial manipulation, will not play well in court." "What about our daughter?" I asked. Leela was my primary concern in all of this. At 12, she was old enough to understand what divorce meant, but too young to cope with the ugliness of it all. She adored her father, and I couldn't bear to shatter her image of him, despite everything. "Given the evidence of his character, we have a strong case for primary custody," Diana assured me, "but I understand wanting to shield her from this. We can pursue a strategy that protects her while still ensuring you get what you deserve." Diana outlined a plan that was both aggressive and strategic. We would document everything, build an airtight case, and then approach Marcus with a settlement offer that would give me what I wanted, while avoiding a public court battle that could hurt Leela. "Men like your husband value their reputation," Diana explained. with threat of public exposure, of fraud, of infidelity, of financial misconduct, is often enough to make them settle quickly and quietly. Over the next week, following Diana's advice, I began moving my separate assets into more secure positions. Priya helped me establish a series of trusts and offshore accounts that would be untouchable in the divorce proceedings. We didn't hide anything. Everything was legal and would be disclosed as required by law. But we made sure Marcus couldn't touch what was rightfully mine. Meanwhile, I continued running the business as if nothing had changed. I visited our bakeries, met with staff, approved new recipes, and maintained the cheerful facade of a successful entrepreneur. No one, not even our longtime employees, knew that my marriage was over or that a battle was brewing. Marcus had moved out, telling Lila he was traveling for business. I hated lying to my daughter, but I needed time to prepare her for the truth. Every night, she would ask when Daddy was coming home, and every night, my heart would break a little more as I made excuses for his absence. "Daddy's working on a big project, sweetheart," I would say, smoothing her dark hair away from her face. "He'll be home as soon as he can." The guilt of the lie weighed on me, but I knew the truth would hurt her even more. How do you tell a 12-year-old that her father has betrayed her mother, that the family she thought was solid is crumbling? I consulted with a child psychologist who advised me to wait until Marcus and I had a clear plan before breaking the news to Leela. "Children need stability and certainty," the psychologist explained. "When you tell her, you should both be present, with a united message about how this will affect her day-to-day life." 10 days after our anniversary dinner, Harper called with a breakthrough. "The Seattle Heights deal," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "I found it. It's a major real estate development project. A mixed-use complex with retail, office space, and luxury condos. The projected value after completion is over $100 million. My breath caught. And Marcus is involved? Not just involved. He's a key investor through one of his shell companies. He used money from your bakery chain to buy in, but the investment is solely in his name. According to my source, he's been working on this for at least 18 months. 18 months, while I was expanding our bakery chain, developing new recipes, and raising our daughter. My husband had been secretly diverting funds into a massive real estate project that could make him richer than we'd ever been together. The betrayal was staggering, but it also gave me leverage. With Diana's guidance, I prepared for confrontation. We gathered evidence, secured affidavits from financial experts, and built an airtight case that would not only guarantee me a fair divorce settlement, but potentially lead to criminal charges against Marcus for fraud and embezzlement. A week later, Marcus finally reached out, asking to meet at the house to discuss terms. His tone in the text message was confident, almost condescending. He clearly thought I was still in the dark, still reeling from the shock, still unprepared for what was coming. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story of justice and comeuppance, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Stories like these remind us that sometimes karma has perfect timing. Now, let's get back to what happened when Marcus thought he had me cornered. I agreed to meet Marcus at our home on a Sunday afternoon. Leela was at a school friend's birthday party, giving us privacy for what would undoubtedly be an unpleasant conversation. I spent the morning preparing, not just mentally, but physically. I chose a crisp white pantsuit that made me feel powerful, styled my hair, applied makeup that made me look both professional and unaffected by his betrayal. When Marcus walked in, he looked momentarily taken aback by my appearance. He'd clearly expected to find me distraught, perhaps still in pajamas with puffy eyes and unwashed hair. Instead, I was the picture of composure, sitting at our dining room table with a cup of tea and a stack of neatly organized folders. "Rebecca," he said, his confidence faltering slightly, "you look well." "Thank you, Marcus. Please, sit down." I gestured to the chair across from me. Maintaining eye contact, he sat, setting his leather portfolio on the table. I noticed he was wearing his most expensive watch, the Patek Philippe I'd given him for his 40th birthday. A subtle power move, or perhaps just thoughtlessness. Either way, it fueled my resolve. I think we both want to make this as painless as possible, he began, his voice smooth, practiced. I've drawn up a preliminary settlement that I believe is more than fair. He slid a document across the table. I didn't even look at it. Before we discuss terms, I have a few questions, I said calmly. For example, I'm curious about Bianca Torres. His expression flickered, surprise, then quick recovery. Bianca? She's a manager at Capitol Hill. What about her? Yes, she is. She's also the woman you've been sleeping with for the past year. The woman you took to Canlis 3 weeks ago, charging the $400 dinner to our business account. The woman you bought a $12,000 bracelet for in February, again, using business funds. The color drained from his face. And then there's the matter of the forged documents, I continued, opening one of my folders. Transferring ownership of our original bakery solely to your name? The remortgage on this house. The new holding companies. You've been busy, Marcus. He sat back, his jaw tight. I could almost see his mind racing, recalculating, adjusting his strategy. Those are serious accusations, Rebecca, and difficult to prove. I smiled. Actually, no, they're quite easy to prove. The forensic accountant has already documented everything. The handwriting expert has already confirmed the forgeries. And your text messages with Bianca discussing your plans to take the business? Those are particularly damning. His eyes narrowed. You had me followed? I protected myself, I corrected him. Just as you've been protecting yourself, or so you thought. I opened another folder and slid across a document. The Seattle Heights development, a $100 million project that you invested in using funds from our business. Quite the secret to keep from your wife and business partner. Now Marcus was truly rattled. His hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. How did you find out? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you committed fraud, Marcus. You embezzled money from our company. You forged my signature. You violated your fiduciary duty. These aren't just grounds for divorce. They're grounds for criminal prosecution. For the first time since I'd known him, Marcus looked afraid. Good, he should be. What do you want? He asked, his voice hoarse. I want what's fair, I replied. I want sole ownership of the bakery chain, which, let's be honest, was built on my grandmother's recipes and my creative direction. I want primary custody of Leela, with generous visitation for you, because, despite everything, you're still her father. I want this house, and I want you to sign over your interest in the Seattle Heights development as compensation for the funds you illegally diverted. He laughed, but it was hollow. You're dreaming. No judge would. A judge would do far worse once they see the evidence of fraud, I interrupted. But I'm willing to keep this out of criminal court if you cooperate. Diana Chen has drawn up the papers. At the mention of Diana's name, Marcus paled further. Her reputation preceded her. You can't afford Diana Chen, he said weakly. I allowed myself a small smile. Actually, I can. You see, there's something you don't know about me, Marcus. Something you never bothered to ask. His eyes narrowed in confusion. 7 years ago, I started investing on my own. Real estate, tech startups, index funds, following my grandmother's advice to always have something of my own. I paused, letting the information sink in. That separate investment portfolio is now worth over $40 million. Marcus's jaw actually dropped. $40 million? That's impossible, is it? You are always so focused on the flashy things, the cars, the watches, the vacation homes. You never understood the power of quiet money, of patient investment, of compound growth. I leaned forward. While you were sleeping with Bianca and plotting to take everything from me, I was building an empire you knew nothing about. The look on his face, shock, disbelief, and dawning respect, was almost worth the pain of his betrayal. Almost. So here are your options, Marcus, I continued, my voice steady. Sign these papers, giving me what I've outlined, and we part ways cleanly. You walk away with your freedom, your relationship with Bianca, if that's what you want, and enough money to live comfortably, though not extravagantly. Or refuse, and I'll see you in court, where I'll pursue not only everything I've mentioned, but also criminal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Your choice. He stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me for the first time. Perhaps he was. For 15 years, he'd seen me as the supportive wife, the creative baker, the doting mother. He'd never seen me as a formidable opponent. You've been planning this, he finally said. I shook my head. No, Marcus, you've been planning this. I'm just making sure it doesn't go according to your plan. After 2 hours of negotiation, during which Marcus cycled through anger, bargaining, and finally resignation, he signed the papers. His hand shook slightly, his signature less confident than usual. As he did, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for what we'd lost and what might have been. When will you tell Leela? He asked, standing to leave. We'll tell her together, I said firmly. Tomorrow evening. She deserves to hear it from both of us. And she deserves the truth. A version appropriate for a 12-year-old, of course. He nodded, looking suddenly older, deflated. For what it's worth, I did love you once. I met his gaze steadily. It's worth very little now, but thank you for admitting it. After he left, I sat alone in our dining room, my dining room now, and allowed myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing. The pain, the anger, the fear, and finally, the relief. It was over. I had protected myself, my daughter, and my legacy. The road ahead would be challenging, but I would walk it on my own terms. The following evening, Marcus returned to the house to help me break the news to Leela. We'd agreed to present a united front, to emphasize that the divorce was a mutual decision and that both of us would always love her. But children are perceptive, and Lila immediately sensed there was more to the story. Is it because of Dad's friend? She asked, her voice small. The one who calls when I'm supposed to be asleep? Marcus and I exchanged shocked glances. I hadn't known Lila was aware of anything. What friend, sweetheart? I asked gently. The lady who works at the bakery, the one Dad takes to dinner sometimes when he says he's working late. Her eyes filled with tears. I saw them once when Emma's mom dropped me off early from ballet. They were kissing in his car. My heart shattered for my daughter, who had been carrying this knowledge alone, afraid to tell either of us what she'd seen. Marcus looked stricken, the reality of how his actions had affected Lila finally hitting home. Lila, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice breaking. That was wrong of me, very wrong. The conversation that followed was one of the hardest of my life. We answered Lila's questions as honestly as we could, while still shielding her from the worst of the betrayal. She cried, raged, and finally fell into an exhausted sleep between us on the couch. One last moment as a family, though we were already broken. The following months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, business restructuring, and emotional healing. Telling Lila about the divorce was as painful as I'd anticipated. She cried, asked questions I couldn't fully answer, and went through periods of anger toward both of us. But with time and therapy, she began to adjust to our new normal. Marcus moved in with Bianca, whose enthusiasm for him seemed to wane once she realized he wasn't bringing the bakery empire with him. I heard through mutual friends that she left him 6 months later for a tech entrepreneur from Bellevue. As for the bakeries, I threw myself into expanding the business, opening 5 new locations within a year. I rebranded slightly, honoring my grandmother by adding her name, Yelena's Gourmet Patisserie. Her recipes, her wisdom, her legacy, it felt right. The Seattle Heights development turned out to be even more valuable than anticipated. Once construction was completed, my stake was worth nearly $70 million. I used a portion of the profits to establish a foundation providing culinary scholarships for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds, giving them the opportunity to pursue their passions without financial constraints. If you've ever faced betrayal but found strength you didn't know you had, leave a comment below. Your story might inspire someone else who's going through something similar. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of resilience and justice. 3 years after that fateful anniversary dinner, I hosted a gala to celebrate the opening of our 20th bakery location. The event was held at the Willow and Vine. Yes, the same restaurant where Marcus had asked for a divorce. I had come full circle. The bakery empire now employed over 200 people across the Pacific Northwest, My net worth had grown to nearly $120 million. Lila, now 15, stood beside me as I cut the ribbon, her smile genuine for the first time in months. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. The first year after the divorce had been particularly challenging. Lila had struggled with the transition, acting out at school and blaming me at times for the family's dissolution. There were nights when I questioned everything: my decision to fight back, my ability to run the business alone, my capacity to be both mother and father to a hurting child. But slowly, things had improved. Lila began to see the truth for herself as Marcus's visits became less frequent, his promises more hollow. She found stability in our new routine and pride in the growing business that would one day be hers. I found unexpected strength in the community of women who rallied around me: Priya with her financial wisdom, Harper with her investigative skills, Diana with her legal brilliance, and countless others who offered support, advice, and friendship when I needed it most. One of those women was Elena, a Russian immigrant like my grandmother, who had been one of our first employees at the original bakery. When I decided to rebrand as Yelena's, I promoted Elena to head baker, entrusting her with my grandmother's precious recipes. "Your babushka would be so proud," Elena told me on the day we unveiled the new signage at our flagship store. "She always said you had fire in your heart." Fire in my heart. Yes, that was what had gotten me through. The fire of determination, of righteous anger, of love for my daughter and respect for my grandmother's legacy. As I looked out at the crowd gathered for the 20th bakery opening, friends, family, employees, and community members who had supported me through everything, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Mr. Patel, our former accountant, looking nervous. "Mrs. Wilson, I just wanted to say congratulations, and I'm sorry about everything that happened." I smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Patel. It all worked out as it should." He hesitated. "I saw Marcus recently. He's working as a sales manager at a car dealership in Tacoma. He asked about you." "What did you tell him?" I asked, curious despite myself. "I told him you were thriving, that the bakeries are more successful than ever, that Lila is doing well." He paused. He seemed regretful. I nodded, surprised to find that the information caused no pain, no bitterness, just a gentle acknowledgement of a chapter closed. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Priya joined me on the restaurant's balcony overlooking Elliott Bay, the same view Marcus and I had shared on countless anniversaries, including our last. "You did it," she said, clinking her champagne glass against mine. "When you called me after that anniversary dinner, you were devastated. Look at you now." I gazed out at the twinkling lights of the Seattle skyline, feeling a profound sense of peace. "I couldn't have done it without you," I told her. "Without your financial guidance, without your friendship." Priya smiled. "Your grandmother would be proud. Always have something of your own, right?" "Right," I agreed, thinking of Yelena, who had passed away the previous year at the age of 92. She had lived just long enough to see me truly stand on my own feet. At her funeral, she had been surrounded by the scent of her beloved Russian pastries, baked by my own hands in her honor. I remembered the last conversation I'd had with my grandmother before she passed. She'd been in the hospital, her once strong body failing, but her mind still sharp. I'd brought her favorite tea cakes, the ones she'd taught me to make when I was just a child. "Vnuchka," she'd said, her voice weak but her eyes bright, "you have made me so proud. Not because you are rich now, money comes and goes, but because you were strong. You did not let that man break you." She'd squeeze my hand with surprising strength. "Remember, the best revenge is not just success, it is peace. Find your peace, Rebecca." And standing there on the balcony with Priya, looking out at the city I loved, I realized I had found it. Not in the money or the business success, but in the knowledge that I had survived, thrived, and created a legacy that would outlast any betrayal. "You know what I realized recently?" I said to Priya, watching the ferries cross the Sound, their lights like moving stars on the dark water. "When Marcus left, I thought I was losing everything, but actually, I found myself. I had indeed found myself, not just as a businesswoman or a mother, but as a complete person, capable of weathering storms I once thought would destroy me. The betrayal had broken my heart, but in healing, that heart had grown stronger, wiser, more compassionate. My phone buzzed with a text from Leela. "Where are you, Mom? They're about to bring out the anniversary cake." Anniversary cake. Not for a marriage this time, but for a business, for a life rebuilt. "Coming," I texted back, then turned to Priya. "Duty calls." As we walked back inside, I caught a glimpse of myself in a mirror, confident, successful, at peace. The woman in the reflection was not the same one who had sat across from Marcus 3 years ago, hearing those devastating words. That woman had been broken. This one was whole. The grand opening celebration continued late into the night. I cut the cake, a towering confection of vanilla bean and raspberry, my grandmother's recipe, to thunderous applause. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for local business pages and social media. The next morning, one of those photos appeared on the front page of the Seattle business section with the headline, "Sweet Success: How Rebecca Wilson Built a $40 million bakery empire." The irony wasn't lost on me. The amount Marcus had never known about was now public knowledge, a testament to what I had accomplished both before and after our marriage ended. I later heard through mutual friends that Marcus had seen the article. He'd apparently shown it to a coworker, claiming, "That's my ex-wife. I helped her start that business." The coworker, knowing the true story, had simply raised an eyebrow and walked away. Karma, as they say, has perfect timing. In the years that followed, I continued to expand the business, but I also made time for the things Marcus and I had always postponed: travel, education, personal growth. Leela and I took cooking classes in Paris, hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, and volunteered at women's shelters, teaching baking skills and financial literacy. These experiences with Leela strengthened our bond in ways I hadn't anticipated. Away from the pressures of Seattle and the shadow of the divorce, she blossomed. In Paris, she discovered a talent for French pastry that surpassed even mine. On the Inca Trail, she showed a determination that reminded me of my grandmother, pushing through exhaustion to reach the ancient city at sunrise. But it was our work at the women's shelters that truly transformed her. Seeing women who had escaped abusive relationships with nothing, who were rebuilding their lives from scratch, gave Leela perspective on our own journey. "Mom," she said one evening as we drove home from the shelter, "I used to be so angry about the divorce. I blamed you sometimes, even though I knew Dad was the one who cheated. But now I understand why you fought so hard. You were protecting us, weren't you?" I glanced at her, this perceptive young woman who had grown from my heartbroken little girl. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything I did was to protect us and what we'd built." She nodded thoughtfully. "I'm proud of you, Mom, and I think Babushka would be too." Those words meant more to me than any business success ever could. I dated occasionally, approaching relationships with a wisdom I hadn't possessed before. Some men were intimidated by my success, others were too interested in my wealth. But eventually, I met Daniel, a widowed architect who appreciated me for who I was, not what I owned. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Daniel had lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier and had raised their son, now in college, on his own. He understood grief, resilience, and the value of second chances. Unlike Marcus, who had always needed to be the center of attention, Daniel was secure enough to stand beside me, supporting my success without feeling threatened by it. "You're extraordinary, Rebecca," he told me on our third date, as we walked along the waterfront after a gallery opening. "Not because of your business or your wealth, but because of how you've handled adversity. That takes real strength." 5 years after that fateful anniversary dinner, I received an unexpected email from Marcus. By then, Lila was in college, studying business and culinary arts. The bakery chain had grown to 30 locations across 3 states. And I had finally found happiness again, both professionally and personally. The email was brief. "Rebecca, I don't expect a response, but I need to say this. I'm sorry for everything. The way I treated you, the lies, the betrayal. You deserved better. You were always the heart of our business, the creative force, the one with the vision. I was just along for the ride, And when I thought I could do better on my own, I made the biggest mistake of my life. Seeing what you've accomplished only confirms what I should have known all along. You were never the one who needed me. I was the one who needed you. Congratulations on all your success. It's well-deserved. Marcus. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop without replying. There was nothing to say. His acknowledgement changed nothing, healed nothing, but it did confirm what I had come to understand through my journey. Validation doesn't come from others recognizing your worth. It comes from knowing your worth, regardless of who else sees it. On the 10th anniversary of my divorce, I hosted a different kind of celebration. The launch of my autobiography, Rising from Crumbs: How Betrayal Led to Empowerment. The book detailed my journey from devastated wife to successful entrepreneur, from financial victim to financial powerhouse. It included practical advice on financial independence for women, drawing from both my personal experience and my grandmother's wisdom. The launch was held at our flagship bakery, now a Seattle institution. As I signed copies and chatted with readers, many of them women with their own stories of betrayal and resilience, I felt a deep sense of purpose. My pain had become my platform, my betrayal had become my breakthrough, and my story was now helping others find their own strength. Leela, now 22 and preparing to take over part of the business after her graduation, stood by my side, proud and supportive. She had grown into a remarkable young woman, strong, independent, and financially savvy, having learned from both my successes and my mistakes. "Mom," she whispered during a quiet moment, "Dad would be proud of you." I smiled, knowing she meant it as a compliment. "I'm not concerned with whether your father would be proud," I told her gently. "I'm proud of myself, and I'm incredibly proud of you." That evening, as the launch party wound down, I found myself alone in my office above the bakery. On the wall hung a portrait of my grandmother Yelena, her eyes wise and knowing, her smile slightly mischievous. Beside it was a framed needlepoint she had made for me years ago, bearing the Russian proverb she lived by: "Trust in God, but lock your door." I raised my teacup to her portrait. "You are right, babushka. Always have something of your own." The empire I had built was more than just financial security. It was proof that I could survive, thrive, and succeed on my own terms. The $40 million fortune I had secretly accumulated before my divorce had grown substantially, but its true value wasn't in the dollars and cents. It was in the independence it represented, the choices it afforded, and the legacy it would create for Leela and future generations. Marcus had whispered, "I want a divorce," thinking it would devastate me. Instead, it had liberated me. He had tried to leave me with nothing, not knowing I had already secured everything that truly mattered. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't the money or the success. It was the realization that I had always been enough, with or without him. And that knowledge was worth more than all the fortune in the world. If this story has inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of triumph and transformation. Remember, sometimes losing what you thought you wanted leads to finding exactly what you need. Thank you for listening to my story.